A few days ago, I did a report, and I said that just possibly, they might be losing control over the situation, because I'm watching what the U.S. dollar index is doing. The U.S. dollar index has been, let's put it this way, okay, I'm looking at the 5-year chart right now, and the last time was before 2015 when it was in this territory. It's descending. And this is surprising me. It's surprising me. But one of the legs that's holding the dollar up, and one of the biggest legs of all that holds the dollar up, is oil, because the dollar is not backed by nothing. And I've said this a lot of times before. It's not purely a fiat currency. The dollar is backed by oil. That's why they call it the petrodollar. And so the dollar moves directly. There's an inverse relationship between the price of oil and the U.S. dollar. And the biggest thing that supports the dollar is oil. And of course, you know, the oil price was as low as it did break below $30. This was a very strong strengthening factor to the U.S. dollar. Helped to rally the dollar up to let's see, at its peak. Let's take a look at the chart here. There was a point there where it was a 103 back in 2017. Its peaks in 2016 were around 99.5, and the peak in just after 2015 was around 100. So in 2017 it peaked around 103. The 12th month, 23rd day, 103.01, the dollar. But the dollar's been depreciating rather rapidly since then, and right now it's at 93.49 and dropping. The thing is why this is such a desperate situation with the dollar. One of the legs of support is oil, and we see the oil price has been rising. Now, a lot of this, they say, has to do with U.S. inventories of oil, a glut in the market that's been keeping the oil price down, and they say that the glut is disappearing or whatever. But you can't listen to the mainstream media on these things. They're full of baloney. The fact is if the oil price rises too much, too quick, too soon, more oil wells are going to come online in West Texas if it becomes profitable. But right now they're slurping these wells in West Texas in the Permian Oil Basin. They're slurping the oil up, the cheap oil, as fast as they can. And they're going to run out of cheap oil eventually, and then the oil plays in West Texas are going to be higher priced. Now, where am I going with all this is, it seems to me that that this whole thing could slip out of control sooner than people think. And how it would slip out of control is the dollar would start to depreciate and the U.S. dollar index would fall. Now, I've often said 70 is the marker on the U.S. dollar index. If it drops below 70, we're going to go into a crisis. Now, a lot of people say, well, it could never drop down to 70. And I've repeatedly said in my videos that, yes, the U.S. dollar index can drop below 70. And just a few weeks ago, it was over 100. It's a matter of weeks ago. It was over 100. Now, it's dropped down and it's heading down below 90 soon, if it keeps on going. It'll be in the 80s. It's just a matter of keeping on going down through the 80s and into the 70s and down through the 70s until it drops below 70. It'll go into full crisis mode if it drops below 70, the U.S. dollar index. And what I mean by that is people have been hoarding dollars. Simply put, they've been hoarding dollars, and the reason why is we've been in ever since 2008 till now, we've been in a very slight, very slight, it's not really what you'd actually call deflation, but nobody's buying anything. It's almost like a depression. And we've had a little bit of inflation, but it's more like stagflation. It's not really what you would. It's been deflationary the whole time. At the same time, you see all that money that they put in 2008 to fight the economic crisis of 2008 was sucked up by the deflation that 2008 created. And so it was a counterbalancing effect. It was like if you had a red hot stove and you threw a big bucket of water on it, that whole bucket would just burn right off in a loud steaming sound. Well, if you didn't have a red hot stove and you threw a bucket of water on it, that water would be all over the place. It wouldn't turn to steam. So what's happened is they've thrown this money through quantitative easing into the system, and the system was so deflationary that it just basically sucked all of that money up into what's called a liquidity trap. This is where the money's went. It's in a liquidity trap. As interest rates are starting to go up now, the money's going to start coming out of that liquidity trap. The banks are going to start to have a bid and be able to make money at this point because the interest rates went up. If they raise these interest rates anymore, even a 25 basis points, what we're looking at is the whole thing starting to turn. The velocity of money is going to start changing. And this is why I say they could start actually losing control before this fall. We might not even make it to this fall if this thing doesn't start turning around now. Now, I said a few days ago, could they be starting to lose control over this thing? And since then till now, it's gotten a little bit worse. It's not getting better. It's not turned around. If this thing keeps going, keeps sliding, at a certain point she'll start to slide faster and they'll lose control over her. They don't even have to raise interest rates higher than it is now. This economic crisis could start sooner than I've been thinking. It could start in the next matter of the next few weeks. Seriously. There's danger signals coming off right now. And if they don't turn around, if we don't turn this thing around, so the dollar's sliding. And the dollar slide generates more dollar sliding because these people have been hoarding dollars. They start to think to themselves, hey, you know, the dollar's sliding. They see it sliding. They see it dropping 95, 94, 93, and they start to get nervous. Right now, they're starting to get nervous. You'll see them some of them start to haul out. That's the way it works. When you get a financial market and something starts to fall and goes bearish, then that creates more bearish sentiment. Because what happens is as it's falling, more and more bears come in. More and more people start to dump whatever asset it is. And that increases that sentiment. And the reverse works true when you're talking about a bullish market. Bullish feeds more bullish and makes them more want to buy. And see, this is what's been happening with the cryptocurrencies. This is what's been driving it upwards is these speculators are very bullish in cryptocurrencies. Extremely bullish right now. They're extremely bullish in cryptocurrencies. I'm watching it, and even with the threat of SegWit2 and the whole Bitcoin blockchain locking up, even with that threat, it's not dropping below 2,500. That's so bullish. Even with the threat that the whole thing could lock up on them. Still, $2,500 is the least they're willing to go with it. That's because it's bullish. And I'm going to tell you what, I didn't mean to talk about Bitcoin right now. I'm not really into talking about Bitcoin, but I'll talk about it for a minute. Just to say that as soon as the August 1st deadline passes, and then they feel more secure that the sky's not going to fall, you are going to see Bitcoin go upwards like a rocket, I think, because that's that bullish that they're not willing to sell it for less than 2,500 or 2,400 right now with the threat of the whole thing locking up on them. That's very bullish signal to me. That fact that they're not willing to take less right now with that threat over their head. That shows me how bullish it is. So anyway, let's not talk about Bitcoin right now. Let's get back to what I was talking about, that this whole financial system could fall to pieces. if it's all hinging on the dollar. And the dollar's been dropping, and what this does is it creates a bearish sentiment, because nobody wants to back a loser. And if the dollar starts to become a loser, and every time it drops 1 point, the U.S. dollar index, it's just like saying, loser, 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 about the dollar. And I mean, these people are going to start to get nervous after a while. They're going to start to, just like they hoarded dollars on the way up, they'll dishoard them on the way down. Right? And what will happen is at a certain point, the velocity of money will start to pick up. Because as they dishoard these dollars, the dollars start to make it into circulation. They start to, it'll actually start to pick the economy up. Look for a pickup in the economy. If the dollar index continues to fall, look for a pickup in the economy, because people will start spending more money. There will be more money floating into the system, because this money has been locked. It's been locked up with people who are frightened. But they'll be less frightened to spend if they see everybody else spending and they see the price of the dollars dropping. Then they'll start hauling those dollars out and they'll start spending. And they're going to be buying precious metals with them. You know they're going to be buying precious metals with them. This could actually trigger a shortage in the precious metals, because people aren't stupid. They're not going to buy a lot of them are not going to buy the paper. And they're especially going to go for silver because it's so cheap right now. And silver, we don't know how much silver they have even left in the world. Let's just put it this way. We don't know the quantities that are left in inventories. We know they're very, 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 very low. And it could take everybody by surprise if all of a sudden they run out and they're not able to deliver on the silver. Then everybody's going to want it suddenly all at once when the price starts to go up. And the price could shoot up like a rocket. They could lose control of this whole thing. Seriously. If the dollar starts to continue to drop, and if all of a sudden something were to snap that you don't expect, this is the way black swans work anyway. You don't see it coming, man. You don't see it coming. Like, you kind of know it's been coming for a long time. Like, we know silver inventories have been dwindling worldwide for a long time, but we don't know where it really stands. What if that's your black swan? What if all of a sudden, boom, the 1,000-ounce bars, there's none left, not enough to produce, not enough to satisfy industrial demand or whatever? There will be a panic by industry for them. And it can dry up so quick, it can dry up overnight. You don't see it coming. And there's not only that, there's so many other black swans that can happen. Italy right now, what a mess. The Chinese real estate market, the Chinese shadow banking system. I haven't done any shows on that. I should do a show on Chinese shadow banking. But I'm going to tell you that's probably one of the biggest messes in the world. Chinese shadow banking is unbelievable. What a criminal racket that is, and how much money they've taken in off the Chinese. It's almost hilarious what they do with Chinese shadow banking. I should do a show on it. Really, I know quite a bit about it and what they're doing and what crooks they are. I should expose them for what they're doing. It's just amazing, and the amount of money. China has built the infrastructure and to keep their Ponzi scheme going, the Chinese Ponzi scheme. Now they're building this new Silk Road and this whole big thing that they're going to do up through mountains into nowhere. They're going to be building roads and stuff and businesses and putting shopping malls in the middle of places where there's nothing. Using miles and miles of concrete and rebar and steel and everything else, going off into the middle of nowhere. Infrastructure programs, just to make work, just to keep their whole big thing going, everything going. And they're going to just add it to the debt. add another couple more $1 trillion into their debt pool. You know, just to keep this whole thing going, because it's all a giant Ponzi scheme. And then we got America, which I don't know which is the biggest Ponzi scheme, America or China. America owes $100 trillion in unfunded liabilities. And the whole world's banking system has all linked itself together with derivatives. Picture in the old days, you know, picture a bunch of ships out on the ocean, and they would all be floating along, and if one ship sinks, the others don't sink, because it's just there. It's a ship that sinks, right? But picture if some captain comes up with this idea. Hey, I know what to do. Let's put chains between all of our ships. We'll tie all of our ships together with chains, and that way if a ship starts to sink, it can't sink, because all the other ships will hold it up because of the chains. If this was his magnificent idea, right? And then say they got all these ships chained together. The little ones, the big ones, all of them were all chained together. Well, this is the banks. The derivatives chain the banks together. So that if one bank sinks, they all sink. Now, if one of these big banks goes down, like, say, Deutsche Bank, right? They all sink together because of the derivatives exposure. And Deutsche Bank is got one of the biggest derivatives exposures of them all. I think it's 100 or is it $70 trillion, something like that. It's just absolutely beyond bizarre. At any rate, you know. And all those Italian banks, that's why they're having to keep those Italian banks afloat, because they're too big to fail. Like Bank di Siena or whatever it's called, the world's oldest bank. They're too big to fail. If they go down, they're linked derivatives-wise. This is why they can't let Greece go. They can't let Greece go bankrupt. They're quite literally, what they're doing is Greece owes them like 300 billion euros, right, to the system. Now, if Greece were to say, okay, we're bankrupt, we're never paying that 300 billion euros back, then the ECB would have to write that $300 billion off of their books. Right now, they keep that 300 billion on their books as an asset. If they had to switch that to a liability, in other words, they owe, it's a non-performing loan, that 300 billion Greece owes, ECB would go down. So they have to keep Greece going, and how they keep Greece going is Greece has to make payments back on that 300 billion, right? So what they do is, say Greece has got a $10 billion payment coming due on the 300 billion they owe. They will give Greece the $10 billion so that Greece can give that $10 billion back to them and pretend like everything's solvent. And this is what they've been doing, because they can't let Greece go down. If they let Greece go down, the whole system goes down, because they've linked everything together with these invisible chains of derivatives exposures. Derivatives exposure. So they can't let any of it go down. But none of it's going to stay up either. The whole thing is on life support, the whole system. And if the whole system goes down, she's going to freeze. Everything's going to freeze. It's all such a mess at this point. They're keeping it together with baling wire, and glue, and duct tape. They're keeping the whole system running. And every time it springs a leak, they put some more duct tape over top of it. Or they plug the hole. You know, and this is what they've been doing. And everybody thinks everything's fine. It's not fine. The whole system's ready to go down. And it's like I say, it's all hinging on the U.S. dollar, and they could be starting to actually lose control over the U.S. dollar right now, because they've been trying to support it with oil, gold, and silver. They've been doing everything that they can do, and raising interest rates, all to support the U.S. dollar, and it's sliding anyway. It's sliding into the ocean. It's been sliding, and I reported on it a few days ago, and since then it's been getting worse. And I told you I'm going to keep my eye on it. I told you I've been reporting on it, and right now this is the second report I'm giving you guys on it, and I'm going to tell you the situation's got a little bit more dire. And if it keeps going in this direction, at a certain point she'll start to slide even faster. And they could lose control over it. They got to haul her back. They got to bring that U.S. dollar up. They got to bring it up to at least 95. If it keeps sliding down, if it goes down below 90, it could start to slide into the 80s and slide. And they might not be able to haul it back at a certain point. So listen, thank you guys for listening. Like and subscribe. And hey, we'll catch you in the next video. Bye.